Rena's father died believing he was a failure, never knowing the empire that made billions was built from his stolen work. But his daughter refused to let history bury his name forever. Through heartbreak, lawsuits, and impossible odds, she fought for justice not with revenge, but with courage and patience. This story reminds us that truth may stay hidden for years, but it never disappears forever. Please support the channel with one like and one share to inspire more stories like this. Thanks for watching.
The candles were already glowing when Wren Calloway set the last dish on her penthouse dining table. She'd spent all afternoon cooking. There was roast chicken with herbed butter, bread fresh from the oven, and 2 glasses of sparkling water, since she couldn't drink anymore. Not with the secret she was carrying. She rested a hand on her stomach. 8 weeks along. She had taken 3 different pregnancy tests, and every single one was positive. She'd practiced the words all week, rehearsing in the mirror of their 34th floor apartment while Manhattan burned orange outside the huge windows. Her plan was perfect. Beckett's keys hit the bowl by the door at 8:14 p.m. She heard the thump of his jacket, then the familiar click of his shoes on the marble floor. She picked up the small card she had written, with only 3 little words inside, and hid it behind her back. Then she heard his voice. It was low and warm, in a way he hadn't spoken to her in months. She walked into the hallway, and then she just froze. His phone was propped against the wall charger, with the screen facing her. It was a video call. A woman named Sloane Mercer filled the screen, dark hair, high cheekbones, and a Cartier watch that glinted in the light. But it wasn't Sloane's face that made something inside of Wren break. It was the way Beckett was laughing. So free, so easy, like a man with absolutely nothing to hide. Or maybe just a man who hadn't been caught yet. Wren stood perfectly still. As a designer, she saw every single detail in those 11 seconds. The angle of his body, the soft way he said the word tonight, as if it held a promise. She backed into the kitchen, placed the card face down, opened her laptop, and typed 3 quick sentences to Jasper Whitfield, the lawyer who handled her father's estate. She hit send before she could change her mind. Then she went to the home office, Beckett's private space, always locked, but he'd gotten careless and found the USB drive right beside his keyboard. She plugged it in and started copying everything. The progress bar crawled. 2%, 18%, 67%. She yanked it out at 94%. It was good enough. By the time Beckett strolled into the kitchen, Wren was already pulling on her coat. "You're going out?" he asked, frowning at the untouched dinner. "Yes," she said, her voice completely steady. She grabbed her bag. She didn't look at the card on the counter. She didn't touch her stomach. She walked to the elevator, pressed the button, and waited for the doors to slide open. She stepped inside. On the counter, the card said, "We're going to be 3. She left it sitting right there. The drive to Philadelphia should have taken 2 hours, but Wren made it in 90 minutes. Her mother, Carla Calloway, opened the front door before Wren even had a chance to knock. She must have heard the car, and after one look at her daughter's face, she didn't say a word. She just stepped aside. She just put the tea kettle on. Wren sat at the old kitchen table where she'd done homework as a kid, where her father, James, read the paper every Sunday, where they ate every Thanksgiving until he got too sick to sit up. The kitchen still smelled like cinnamon and old wood, just like it always had. She pressed her palms flat against the table and took a deep breath. "I found something," she said. "On Beckett's USB drive." Carla put 2 mugs on the table. "What kind of something?" Wren opened her laptop and found the file. It was a contract from 8 years ago, scanned and buried inside 3 different folders. Her father's name was right there on the signature line. James A. Calloway, lead architect. The project was the famous Lorne Meridian Tower on 6th Avenue, the exact building that made Beckett's father, Conrad Lorne, a titan in New York real estate. The contract had a royalty clause, a fee-sharing deal for the design rights that over 8 years would be worth about 28% of the entire Lorne Meridian Group. And it had never been paid. Carla sat down hard, her hands wrapped tightly around her mug. "Your father tried to get that money for 3 years," she said. Conrad's people said there was a mistake in the contract. Then they just stopped answering his calls. She paused and swallowed. Then the work just dried up. All of it. Every single client vanished. Your father always thought it was just a bad economy. It wasn't the economy, Ren said, her voice quiet. No, Ren stared at the screen. Her father had died 5 years ago, broke and exhausted, believing he was a failure. He had designed the very building that created an empire, and he died, thinking it was his own fault that he had nothing to show for it. Carla reached over and touched her daughter's hand. Is there anything else? Do you remember Jasper Whitfield? He called me 6 months after the funeral. He said he was holding the original signed contract, the one with the real notary stamp. He told me he was waiting for the right time. Just then, Ren's phone buzzed. It was a text from a number she didn't recognize. Miss Calloway, this is Jasper Whitfield. I know tonight was probably difficult. I have waited 8 years to hear from your family. When you're ready, I have everything. Ren read it again, then looked up at her mother. I'm pregnant, she said. Carla closed her eyes for a long moment. When she opened them again, they were shining with tears. Well then, you have even more of a reason to fight. Ren nodded slowly. Outside, a soft, steady rain began to fall against the old window. She thought of the card on the penthouse counter. She thought of Beckett's easy laugh on that video call. She thought about her father's name on a contract that was never honored. I'm not filing for divorce, she said, her voice low. Not yet. Carla looked at her, confused. First, I'm going to disappear, Ren said. And when I come back, I'm going to be the one holding all the cards. She closed the laptop, drank her tea, and began to make her plan. 3 years can change you in ways you don't see coming, not in the big dramatic moments, but in all the small, quiet ones that add up, until you are someone else entirely. Ren Calloway's office on the 3rd floor of an old warehouse in Los Angeles smelled of drafting paper, cold brew coffee, and the lavender candle she always lit during long client calls. Her walls were covered in architectural blueprints and fancy certificates. She had won 3 national design awards in just 3 years, a career that made others in the industry wonder, where did she come from? She never gave the same answer twice. Her firm, Calloway Studio, now had 6 employees, a long waiting list, and an article in Architectural Digest that her mom had framed for her kitchen in Philadelphia. And every evening at 6:15, Ren's assistant would knock on her door to say goodnight, and Ren would close her laptop, grab her bag, and drive her simple white Toyota Camry 12 minutes to the apartment where Theo was waiting. Theo was 3 years old. He had his father's dark eyes and his mother's stubborn mouth, and his favorite thing to do was build things out of whatever he could find. Cardboard boxes, sofa cushions, wooden blocks. He would stack them with a natural feel for design that made Ren's heart ache in a very complicated way. Mama, look, he said that Tuesday, pointing at a tower he had made from old Amazon boxes. I made a building. That is a wonderful building, she said, kneeling beside him. Tell me all about it. It's really tall, he said with a serious look, and nobody can knock it down. She kissed the top of his head and didn't cry. She had gotten very good at not crying. Later, after Theo was asleep, curled around a stuffed elephant with one protective arm, Ren sat on the counter, eating leftover rice and scrolling through news on her phone. A headline made her stop. Lorne Meridian Group files for New York Stock Exchange IPO with a projected $2.3 billion valuation. She read the article twice. Then she called Jasper Whitfield. He answered on the first ring, as if he'd been expecting her. I saw it too, he said, instead of hello. The royalty clause in the contract, she said. How long is it good for? There was a short pause. There's a 10-year window on the enforceability clause. That was standard for contracts back then. He paused again, choosing his words carefully. Ren! If they go public, the corporate restructuring will legally wipe out the original contract terms. Forever. She glanced at the clock on her microwave. 11:47 p.m. How many days do we have left? She asked. 47. She was quiet for a long time. From the bedroom, she could hear Theo's soft, sleeping breaths. Book me 2 tickets to JFK, she said. I'll call you with the dates. She hung up and sat in the darkness. She thought of the life she had built here. She thought of everything that was stolen from her before. Then she opened her laptop and started to make a list. JFK Airport at 6 in the morning smells of jet fuel and regret. And Wren felt neither. She walked through arrivals with Theo on her hip and a bag on her shoulder, wearing dark jeans, a gray wool coat, and no jewelry. Nova was already there, leaning against a post with her arms crossed, holding 2 cups from Starbucks. She had that look, the one you get after staying up all night and loving it. "You look awful," Nova said, handing her a coffee. "You look like you drove from a different time zone," Wren replied. "Brooklyn." "Same thing." Nova looked down at Theo. "Hey, buddy." Theo stared seriously at his aunt. "You have red hair now." "Yes, I do." "Why?" "Because I wanted to." He thought about it. "Okay." He reached for her coffee. She let him for a second, then pulled it back. He laughed. That was them, all figured out in under a minute. They took a cab to Midtown East, nowhere near the Upper East Side. Wren had found the sublet through a colleague. It was a furnished 2-bedroom on 51st Street, paid for 3 months in cash under the name Callaway Studio. No paper trail. Jasper was waiting inside when they arrived. He was 70 years old, with silver hair, wearing a suit that looked freshly pressed despite the hour. He shook Wren's hand, glanced at Theo, then looked back at Wren. "He has his grandfather's eyes," Jasper said quietly. "James would have loved to see him." Wren didn't answer. She set Theo up with a tablet and headphones in the bedroom, then went to the kitchen table where Jasper had all his files spread out. The case was clean. The original contract was fully notarized. The royalty clause was absolutely ironclad. James Callaway had signed it in good faith, and Conrad Lorne had buried it in bad faith. Argued properly before a federal judge, the damages could lead to a massive cash settlement or an equity transfer. "There's one hurdle," Jasper said. "Conrad has bought judges," Wren said flatly. 2 in the Southern District. He slid a folder to her. "But not in the Eastern District. I've already filed a preliminary motion there." Wren nodded. "What else?" "The timeline is tight," he paused. "And Beckett's legal team is aggressive. The second they know someone is challenging the IPO, they will come at us hard." "Good," Nova said from the counter, eating an apple. "We want them on the run." Wren looked at the table, buried in paperwork. 3 years of patience, 47 days left. A 3-year-old was sleeping in the next room. And then her phone vibrated. An unknown number. A text. "Callaway, I know you are in New York. I'd like to propose something mutually beneficial." Harlan. She stared at the name. Dex Harlan. Beckett's biggest rival. She had never met him. She hadn't told a soul she was in the city. She showed her phone to Nova, who simply raised an eyebrow. "How does he know?" Nova asked. "That is exactly what I plan to find out," Wren said. She told herself she wouldn't do it. Then she did it anyway. La Bernardine on West 51st was 12 blocks from her apartment. She walked in the cold, her hands pushed deep into her coat pockets. Just needed some air, she told herself. This wasn't what it seemed. The November wind from the Hudson River cut between buildings, and she leaned into it like it was a punishment she deserved. She stood on the opposite side of the street. Through the restaurant, its tall windows, warm light spilled onto the wet pavement. She could see inside. White tablecloths, low candles, the quiet drama of expensive taste. She spotted them in 4 seconds. Beckett was at a corner table. He looked as the same. No, he looked better, which felt worse. The suit was darker. His hair was cut a little shorter. He was talking, and what he said made Sloane Mercer smile slowly. It was the smile people give when they are performing happiness, but the performance is just a little off. Wren watched for 40 seconds. That was it. She didn't feel the rage she'd expected. She felt something quieter, more destructive. Clarity. This man had spent almost no time looking for her. He had filed paperwork, she knew that. She knew about the divorce petition he never withdrew after 6 months when she couldn't be found. He had moved on. He built the IPO. He had lived his life. She walked back to the apartment. The city was enormous and indifferent around her, and she was grateful for it. New York did not care about her heartbreak. It never had. That was why she had always loved it, and why she had to leave. Theo was asleep when she returned. Nova was on the couch reading her Kindle, her feet tucked beneath her, a lamp casting a small circle of warm light. "You went, didn't you?" Nova said. It wasn't a question. Yes, and Rin hung up her coat and sat on the couch's edge. "He looks fine," she said. "He looks completely fine." Nova was silent for a moment. "You knew he would. Knowing and seeing are two different things." "Yeah." Nova put down her Kindle. "Did you cry yet?" "No, go ahead. I won't say anything." Rin pressed the heels of her hands to her eyes. One breath, then two. The third breath broke something she had kept sealed for a long time, and she cried quietly, precisely, for exactly 4 minutes. Then she stopped. Wiping her face, she opened her MacBook Pro. "Okay," she said. "Okay?" Nova asked. "Now I'm ready." She pulled up Jasper's case documents. "We need to request the full Eastern District hearing schedule. I want to know exactly when we can stand in front of a judge." Nova unfolded herself from the couch and looked over her shoulder. "Also," Ren added, "text Dex Harlan back. Tell him I'll meet him. Coffee only, in a public place. He picks the location, I pick the time." She didn't look up from her screen. Her eyes were completely dry now. She had work to do. Dex Harlan was not what she'd imagined. She had expected the Wall Street act, an aggressive jaw, a firm handshake, the whole show. Instead, he was at a corner table in a coffee shop on Lexington Avenue, reading a worn book with a pen in his hand, actually making notes in the margins. An Americano sat half-drunk beside him. He looked like a man who was always doing two things at once and had long ago stopped apologizing for it. He stood when she came over, tall, composed, not like Beckett's cold, calculated stillness. This was a comfortable kind of composure, like someone who decided long ago that rushing was a choice and who usually chose not to. "Calloway, Mr. Harlan." She sat down but did not shake his hand. "How do you know I'm in New York?" "I have a contact in the Eastern District Court system who flags filings I'm interested in," he said. "Your attorney's motion hit the system 48 hours ago. Your name is on the document." She processed the information without showing a reaction. "What do you want?" He closed his book. Lorne Meridian's IPO would solidify their control over commercial real estate along the Hudson, a territory I've been active in for 6 years. He went on, "If the IPO is successful, Conrad will restructure, take over 3 properties where I have competing offers, and lock me out of a market I've spent a fortune building." "So, you want to use my lawsuit to kill his IPO?" "I want to fund your lawsuit," he replied. "All legal costs, Jasper Whitfield's fees, expert witnesses, court costs, all of it will be covered, in exchange for nothing except the lawsuit goes forward." Ren studied him. "All right, that is a generous offer for no obvious return." "The return is the result," he said, picking up his coffee. "If Conrad misses his IPO timeline, his whole restructuring falls apart. That's worth much more to me than what your legal fees will cost. And if I win stock instead of a cash settlement, you get nothing." "Correct." She looked at him for a long moment. "You are not a good man, Mr. Harlan. You are using my father's stolen contract just to protect your market share." He did not flinch. "That is accurate. But you are not pretending to be anything else," she said. "No." She wrapped her hands around her coffee. "I'll use your money, but I make every single decision. Strategy, timing, settlement terms, they are all mine. You don't speak to my lawyer without me there. You don't contact anyone involved in this case. You are just a checkbook and nothing more." He was quiet for a second. Then something in his expression changed. It was not quite respect, but it was close. "Agreed." She stood up. "I'll have Jasper send the fee structure." She picked up her bag. "One more thing. Do you know Sloan Mercer?" A slight tension appeared around his eyes, almost invisible. "We have met. Nova tells me you two have some history." "Nova is thorough," he said. "Yes, she is." Ren looked at him steadily. "If this is also personal for you, I have to know that now." Personal feelings have a way of complicating things at the worst possible moment. He looked out the window at the street. Then it is personal, and it is business. Both can be true. Then keep them separate, she said, or I will end this arrangement immediately. She left. On the sidewalk, she texted Nova one word. Confirmed. Nova's reply came 3 seconds later. Buckle up. The Eastern District Federal Courthouse in Brooklyn was the kind of building that makes you feel the weight of its purpose before you even reach the steps. Wren arrived 11 minutes early. She dressed to be capable, not flashy, a dark blazer, a structured bag, and flat shoes. Jasper was already inside, talking with the clerk. She got a drink of water and pulled up the hearing notes on her phone. She was reading when the doors swung open behind her. She knew who it was before she even looked. You just know certain sounds. Even years later, a specific walk, the way certain shoes hit a marble floor. She turned, because not turning would feel like admitting she was scared, and she was done with that. Beckett Lorne stopped cold, just 6 feet away. He wore a charcoal gray suit, and he looked exactly like the man she left behind, and yet nothing like him at all. 3 years had changed his face. It hadn't aged him, but it made him look sharper, as if something had been stripped away from beneath his usual control. In that first, brief moment, he just looked like a man who hadn't slept well in a very long time. His legal team stopped right behind him, 4 people, all just watching. Wren met his eyes for exactly 2 seconds. Then she went back to her phone. Wren. His voice was different than she'd expected. It was quieter. Like he wasn't sure he was even allowed to say her name. She looked up. Mr. Lorne, she said, keeping her tone pleasant and professional, as if meeting him for the first time. I am sorry. I just need to review something before we go inside. She walked straight to the hearing room. Behind her, she could hear his team whispering that she was the one suing him, but from Beckett, there was only silence. Inside, Jasper leaned over and whispered, "How are you holding up?" "Fine," she answered. "You just walked past Beckett Lorne like he wasn't even there." "I did, and you're fine." She placed her phone on the table, folding her hands over it. "I will be," she said. "Ask me again in about 43 days. The hearing lasted for 90 minutes, and it was all just procedural details, motions, scheduling, and a quick argument over jurisdiction that Jasper handled so well you could tell he was a seasoned pro. Conrad Lorne's legal team tried to block them from using the contract. So, Jasper simply pulled out a certified copy of the original notarized document. The entire room fell silent. Wren didn't even glance at Beckett when the paper was presented. Her eyes were locked on Conrad Lorne, who was sitting in the second row. He was 65 years old and radiated power, the kind of man who had spent his entire life avoiding consequences. But when he saw that contract, something in his face shifted. It was fear, pure and simple. In that second, Wren understood. He had always known this day might come. He just bet that James Calloway's family would never be organized enough, rich enough, or angry enough to actually fight him. He had bet wrong on all 3. That night, Beckett confronted his father at the Lorne family home on East 71st Street. It was the house he grew up in, where Conrad still had his main office right on the first floor. The staircase was lined with portraits of stern men in suits, like a constant warning of what you were supposed to become. "Tell me about the Calloway contract," Beckett said. Conrad was at his desk, jacket off, glasses on, looking over the exact documents from the hearing. He did not seem surprised. He'd had all afternoon to rehearse his lines. "There was an issue with the original phrasing," Conrad said. "The section on royalties was vague. Legal looked at it back in 2017 and told us it wasn't enforceable. That's not what the lawsuit says. The lawsuit is a move by a woman who is just after money from that woman's father designed the building on 6th Avenue, Beckett said, his voice flat. "Our flagship building. The one that made this entire company." Conrad took his glasses off. James Calloway was paid for his work. The design fee, yes, but not the royalty clause. The royalty clause was, "I read the contract, Dad." He hadn't, not yet. But the way he said it made Conrad stop talking. "I need the truth, not the version your lawyers came up with." Conrad studied his son for a long moment, then carefully told a version of the truth, perfectly polished like he had his whole life. Yes, he admitted, there was a clause. Yes, they allowed it to expire. And yes, Calloway had complained, but he was managed, and in the end, he just gave up. I made a business decision, Conrad explained. That is what you do. You protect the company. Beckett just stared at him. And Stowe, he died thinking he was a failure. People make their own choices. He designed your greatest building, and you buried his contract and let him believe he had failed. Conrad stood up. I built this entire company for you. Everything in this room, everything with your name on it, I built. And I protected it. That is what fathers are supposed to do. Beckett didn't reply. He just picked up his jacket from the chair. I am putting together a full legal response to the lawsuit, he said. We will fight them on the contract's timeline. He left without saying another word. For 11 minutes, he sat in the dark in the back of his Mercedes, right outside his father's house. Then he called his head of legal and told them to build the defense case. He told himself he still believed his father. Because if he did not, then everything he thought he knew about his own life would simply fall apart. That night, alone in his penthouse that felt so wrong quiet, in that awful way a room is when someone is missing, he took out his phone. For the first time in 2 years, he searched for Wren's name. Calloway Studio Los Angeles, award-winning and growing. He looked at her picture on the company website for a very long time. Then he placed his phone face down on the cool marble countertop. He had a counter motion to file. He had an IPO to protect. He had a company built on his father's choices, his own ambition, and on things he was only now starting to question. He went to bed at 1 a.m. and slept horribly. If he was being honest, he had not slept well in 3 years. But he was not always honest with himself, and he was only just starting to realize that. The ruling came down at 2:17 p.m. on a Tuesday. Jasper read it first. He stood in the courthouse hall with the paper in his hands, and Wren watched his face try to stay completely neutral. She had seen that exact look on clients right before she had to give them bad news about a project budget. Tell me, she said. The judge ruled the royalty clause is admissible as evidence, Jasper said carefully. However, he paused, the notarization has a technical issue. The signature of the second witness, the one who confirmed James's signature for the notary, that person's identity can't be verified. He went on, without a living witness or a secondary record, the notarization is invalid under New York state law. And without a valid notarization, the contract can't be used as a legally binding document. We can still argue the case, but we have to start over using different evidence. He folded the document. The judge has not dismissed the case, but we just lost our single most important piece of evidence. Nova, standing nearby with her arms crossed, turned and walked to a window. She pressed her hand flat against the glass without saying a word. Wren stood completely still. She did the math in her head. Her 47 days had just shrunk to 31. Without the notarized contract to anchor their case, they would need to rebuild everything, using other documents, emails, financial records, old letters. It was possible, but it would be so much harder. Who was the second witness? She asked. Jasper hesitated for just a fraction of a second too long. Jasper, the second witness was listed as P. Lauren, he said. Petra Lauren, Conrad's wife. Wren just stared at him. You knew this? I knew her name was on the document. I did not know if she was still alive or findable. I should have investigated more. That is my mistake, and I am sorry. Wren looked up at the ceiling and took a deep breath. Where is she now? She has been out of the public eye for 2 years. There were some reports about her health. I would need to find her, Wren interrupted. Today. She walked to the courthouse exit alone, pushed through the heavy doors into the cold November air, and stood on the steps looking out at the Brooklyn skyline. Gray sky, gray water, and a city that just kept going, completely indifferent to her own crisis. She pulled out her phone and called Theo's babysitter. Theo was fine. He had eaten all of his lunch. He had built a fort using pillows. He was doing just fine. She hung up and stood there for another minute. Then she forced herself to remember why she was really here. It was not for the money. It was not even entirely for her father, though he certainly deserved it. She was here because somewhere in a Manhattan penthouse, another contract had been buried, the one for a 3-year-old girl. The unspoken promise between a child and the father who did not know she existed. And time was running out on that contract, too. She walked to the subway, took out her Kindle, and opened a page she had bookmarked in Meditations. It was a line she had been rereading for 3 years. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. She read it 3 times. The train arrived. She got on. She was not giving up. Petra Lauren had picked Bryant Park for their meeting because she liked to watch the people. Wren understood that. She knew what it was like to want to be surrounded by movement when your own life felt frozen. Petra was already seated when Wren got there, wrapped in a camel-colored coat, a cup of tea on the small iron table in front of her. She was 60, with silver hair and a delicate, precise face. You could tell she'd spent a lifetime perfecting her composure, and honestly, she looked tired of it. "Thank you for coming," Wren said, sitting down. "Thank you," Petra replied, "for not bringing anyone else." Petra's hands were wrapped around her teacup, and her left hand trembled just slightly. Wren saw it wasn't nerves, it was something else. "I was diagnosed 14 months ago," Petra said, noticing Wren's gaze. "Stage 2. We are managing it. I'm sorry, don't be." It made things a lot clearer. She looked out at the park, at all the people with their coffee and their own ordinary problems. I was the second witness. When James signed that contract, I was in the room. Conrad asked me to be there, saying it was just a formality. So I signed it. I didn't read it carefully. I trusted Conrad knew what he was doing. She took a breath. I have trusted Conrad for 37 years. Most of that time, it cost me very little. This year, I realized how high the price really was. Wren's voice was steady. "Would you provide a sworn affidavit, confirming that you were the second witness?" "Yes," she said, without hesitation. "My lawyer prepared one 3 weeks ago. I have been waiting for the right person to ask." Wren just stared at her. "You have been waiting?" "I watched the news, Ms. Calloway. When I saw you filed the lawsuit, I knew you were coming." She reached into her handbag, pulled out a sealed legal envelope, and slid it across the table. "I need you to understand something, though. I am not doing this for your case, or for myself, or even for the right reasons. I am doing it because," she paused, her jaw tightening, "because I knew your father. I met him once, at the contract signing. He was a kind man, so proud of his work. And I watched Conrad take that from him, and I did nothing. And then he died, and I have been doing nothing ever since." She looked directly at Wren. "You deserved better. Your father deserved better. That is the only thing I am certain of." Wren held the envelope, unable to speak. "There is one more thing," Petra said, her voice quiet. "Conrad and Sloan set up that whole scene you saw that night. The phone call? Beckett was on a real work call with Sloan. She timed it to look intimate, for when Conrad knew you would be home, they needed you gone." The world around Wren went silent. "Beckett did not know," she whispered. "He knew nothing. Conrad told him you had left because you were unhappy, that you had found someone else." Petra's gaze was unwavering. "He believed it because he already felt guilty. Guilty for working too much, for not truly seeing you. Guilt makes people believe things they should not." Wren looked down at the envelope in her hands. "He looked for you," Petra said quietly. "For almost a year. Conrad told him to stop. Said it was not dignified. So eventually," she trailed off. "He eventually stopped. But he did look." Wren stood up. She carefully tucked the envelope into her tote bag. "Thank you, Mrs. Lauren. Petra," she put on her coat. "I hope your treatment goes well." She walked away, through Bryant Park, and disappeared into the crowd. Her face was a perfect mask of calm. Her hands were completely steady. She refused to let herself feel what Petra had just told her. Not yet. Not there. And certainly not in the middle of everything. There were 29 days left. She had the affidavit. She had work to do. She would feel all the other things later. She always did. Nova found the email chain at 11:40 p.m. on a Wednesday, hunched over her laptop at the kitchen table. 3 empty coffee cups stood beside her. She had that focused look she gets when she is about to crack something. "Ren," she said. "Come here." Ren came over. The email chain was from 3 years ago. It came from an internal Lauren Meridian server, which Nova got into through a security hole she refused to explain. There were 12 messages, all between Conrad Lauren and Sloan Mercer, starting 8 days before the night Ren had walked out. She read them one by one. The first 5 were all business. The IPO timeline, the restructuring plan, a risk assessment of the Callaway contract. Then came message 6 from Conrad. "We need her out of the picture before she finds the Callaway files. Beck will not act. We have to handle it ourselves." Message 7 from Sloan. "I know exactly how to do it. Trust me." Then came message 12. It was sent the night of the dinner. "Done. She is gone." Ren stood at the kitchen table and read the entire email chain twice. Then she set the laptop down and walked to the bedroom doorway. Theo was asleep. She listened to his breathing for a moment, then came back and sat down. "He did not know," she said. "No," Nova said. "They told him I left because I was unhappy, because I had," she could not finish. "He believed them. He was already feeling guilty," Nova said. Petra was right. Guilt is a door people leave unlocked. She paused. "It does not make him innocent, Ren. He still stopped looking for you. He still chose to believe it. I know. You still deserve everything you are fighting for. I know that too." Ren leaned back in her chair and stared at the ceiling. Sloan knew Beckett was going to come after her eventually, did she not? That is why she got close to Conrad first. For protection. If the IPO is a success, Conrad protects her. If it fails, she still has whatever she has managed to steal. Nova pulled up another file. "I found a secondary account. She has been quietly selling off Lauren Meridian's smaller assets for 14 months, just under the reporting threshold. It all adds up to about $4 million. Ren looked at her sister. "She has been robbing them." "She has been robbing him," Limnova corrected. "Conrad is the one who trusted her. Beckett's name is on the company, but Conrad has been the one actually running things." Ren was quiet for a second. "Send the subsidiary information to Jasper. He needs to know for the hearing." She paused. "And send an anonymous tip to the SEC. Just the numbers. No name attached. Let them find her themselves." Nova started typing. "And Beckett?" Ren looked at the email chain still open on the screen. Conrad's words, "She is gone. Done. He gets to find out the same way I found out," she said. "By seeing the evidence right in front of him and having to decide whether to believe it." She closed the laptop. "We have 22 days. I want to be ready for everything." She went to bed at midnight. Lying there in the dark, she thought about a man who had looked for her for a year and then simply stopped. She thought about what it felt like to be the one who had been looking for justice for 3 years and had not stopped. She thought about Theo, who deserved a father, and about herself, who deserved answers, and her father's name on a contract that had been worthless until now. She turned over, closed her eyes, and slept. She had stopped waiting for things to be fair. She had started making them fair herself. That was the only way she could live with this. The press conference was at Beckett Lauren's office in Midtown. It was a sleek conference room on the 28th floor with floor-to-ceiling windows facing south. Manhattan was spread out below them like a map. Ren had picked the time herself, 10 a.m. on a Thursday, 30 minutes before the New York Stock Exchange opened. She wore a charcoal blazer with her hair pulled back. She carried certified copies of the contract, Petra's affidavit, and a one-page summary she had written herself at midnight on the 4th draft. She stood at the front of the room, facing 12 financial journalists, 2 wire services, and a camera from CNBC. Jasper stood to her left. Nova stood at the back, arms crossed, watching the door. Ren spoke clearly, without any drama. She laid out the details of the contract. Her father's design work, the royalty clause, the 8 years of unpaid royalties. She presented the legal filing. She presented Petra's affidavit, pointing out it was given voluntarily and without pressure. She presented the liquidation numbers Nova had found, noting the SEC had been tipped off and was now investigating. She answered 4 questions. She never once raised her voice. She did not mention Beckett's name. At 10:22 a.m., she thanked the room and stepped away. At 10:31 a.m., Lauren Meridian pre-market shares dropped 11%. At 10:47 a.m., Conrad Lauren appeared at the back of the room. Security had not stopped him, because no one thought he would show up himself. And that told Wren everything she needed to know about how badly they had been blindsided. He was in control, but just barely. "This is a fabrication," he announced to the room. "This is a disgruntled family using a decades-old document to interfere, Mr. Lauren," Jasper said calmly. "Pietra Lauren's affidavit is notarized, witnessed, and filed with the court as of this morning. The contract is legally authenticated. I would encourage you to speak with your lawyer." Conrad looked at Wren. For the very first time, she looked right back at him, not with anger, but with something quieter, more final. Recognition. She saw him for exactly what he was. "My father built your flagship tower." She said it quietly, not for the cameras, but just for him. "He died believing he was a failure. Ethan, I would like you to carry that." She picked up her bag. "We are done here." She walked to the elevator. Nova fell in step beside her. As the doors opened, Wren glanced back one last time and saw him, at the edge of the room by the window. Beckett Lauren. She had not known he was there. He was standing perfectly still, just watching her. His legal team was talking to him, but he was not listening. She held his gaze for 1 second. 2. Then the elevator doors closed. In the lobby, Nova let out a long breath. "How do you feel?" Wren thought about it honestly. "It's like I just put down something incredibly heavy," she said. "Good heavy or bad heavy, just heavy." She pushed through the revolving door and onto the street as cold air hit her face. "Get Jasper on the phone. I need to review the settlement details before the day is over." She was already 3 steps ahead of him. She always had been. But now, for the first time, everyone else could see it too. After the press conference, Beckett didn't go back to the office. He just walked. He did something he almost never did anymore. He left his phone in his jacket and just started walking south through Midtown, past the Empire State Building, without looking up, heading east towards the river. The city just moved around him with its usual uncaring speed. He walked for what felt like 45 minutes until his legs finally told him to stop. He sat on a bench near the East River. It was cold, but he didn't really care. He thought about the press conference. He thought about the real contract, the original one. He thought of James Calloway, that name from the blueprints of his childhood. He was the architect of the building. His father always said, made them who they were. And then he thought of Wren and how she looked up on that stage. The 6 words she spoke to his father changed everything in that room for good. He pulled his phone out and called his assistant. "I need it all. Every email, every file, every message between Conrad Thorne and Sloan Mercer for the past 4 years. Send it to my personal email, not the server. And do not tell anyone." His next call was to Sloan. She answered on the second ring, her voice warm, as if it were just any other day. He made a mental note of her tone. "We need to meet," he said. "Of course. Where are you?" "My office." "In 1 hour." He got back in 30 minutes and was already reading through the files before she arrived. He found it in the 7th email. He read it twice to be sure. Then he saw message 12, which just said, "Done. She's gone." He put his phone down, placed his hands flat on his desk, and took a long breath. When Sloan walked in, she was wearing a mask of professional concern, like an actress who had rehearsed 3 different versions of a scene. She sat down across from him. He didn't offer her coffee. He simply turned his laptop screen so she could see it and waited. He watched her read it, saw the gears turning in her mind, what to deny, where to draw her line, how to get out of it. Beckett, don't. His voice was so quiet it made her freeze. I'm not asking for an explanation. I'm telling you these have already been sent to my lawyers and to the SEC. I flagged those subsidiary withdrawals myself. He paused for a moment. That is the only conversation we are going to have. She stood up, her composure perfect. You had to hand it to her, but her hands gave her away. He always noticed little details like that. She left without another word. Alone in his office, he thought about Ren leaving their penthouse 3 years ago. At the time, he told himself it was just another rough patch in a marriage full of them. He thought about the year he spent looking for her. He had truly looked for her, not just gone through the motions his father wanted him to. He remembered that he only stopped because his father insisted Ren had moved on. That the kindest thing he could do was just let her go. He couldn't believe he had actually bought that story. He made one more phone call, but not to his legal team. He called a therapist his doctor had recommended for 2 years and made an appointment for the very next morning. Then, in his quiet office, he finally let himself feel it all. He had made horrible mistakes and would have to live with them. It was not a comfortable feeling. But he sat with that feeling anyway. Conrad himself called for an emergency board meeting, set for 9 a.m. on Friday. Jasper immediately saw it as a red flag. Men like Conrad Thorne only call meetings like that when they are absolutely sure they hold the winning hand. He was wrong about the cards, he just didn't realize it yet. Ren wasn't there. She was 2 floors down in a conference room with Nova and Jasper, watching a live video feed from one of the board members. Theo was safe at home with the babysitter. It was 9 a.m. and after just 5 hours of sleep, Ren felt perfectly clear. The board had 11 members. Conrad had spent 20 years building his majority, but 2 members had been following the SEC inquiry overnight. 2 others had now seen the real subsidiary numbers. And Beckett had personally called 4 board members the night before. Ren knew this because Jasper had been legally tracking their phones for a week. The meeting started, and Conrad moved fast. He motioned to table all claims against Thorne Meridian, pending an internal review. At the same time, he moved to remove Beckett as CEO, pending a conduct review. The first motion failed 5-6. Conrad's expression never changed. He just moved on to the second one. It failed 4-7. Beckett had locked in his votes before 8 a.m. that morning. Conrad had underestimated his son for the last time. He stood, pointing a finger at Beckett, his voice tight with anger. You are throwing away everything I built for you, and everything I protected. His voice was steady, a stillness that Ren would have recognized. She used to think it was just coldness, but now she knew it was the sound of a decision that was already made and settled. You ruined a man's career over a contract, Beckett said. You let him die believing he was a failure. You made my wife leave because of a lie. He paused. And then you told me to stop looking for her. After a long pause, he said, I'm done letting you decide what is worth protecting. By 10:15 a.m., Conrad was being escorted out of the building. At 11:30 a.m., the SEC announced a formal investigation into Sloan Mercer for securities fraud. Her accounts were frozen. Her system access was revoked. Downstairs, Jasper closed his laptop. Nova leaned back, covered her face with her hands, and let out a long breath of relief. Ren just sat with her hands folded on the table. She had watched the feed until the vote was official. Then she just turned it off. She didn't need to watch Conrad leave or see the rest of the dominoes fall. Just knowing it was happening was enough for her. The settlement proposal, she said. Is Beckett's team ready? Jasper nodded. They called this morning before the meeting. He paused. He called Ren, not his lawyers. Him, personally. She took that in, her face completely unreadable. Schedule it for Monday, she said. I want the weekend. She texted the babysitter, home by noon. Can you stay for lunch? Then she put her phone away, stood, and said, let's go get Theo. For the first time in 31 days, she had said something that wasn't about the case. It felt like opening a window in a stuffy, sealed room. The meeting was set for that Monday morning, in a neutral law office in Rockefeller Center. Wren made sure she arrived first and was already seated when Beckett came in. She had wondered how it would feel, sitting across a table from him with lawyers and a real mission, with all the buried secrets finally out in the open. She realized it felt like standing in a house that she had designed but never had the chance to live in. Beckett sat across from her, his lawyers taking their places. He looked at Wren like a man who'd rehearsed a long speech but decided at the last second just to throw it away. "Before we start," he said, speaking just to her, "I want to say something off the record." His lawyer touched his arm, but he gently pushed it away. "I believed the wrong story," he said. "I'd failed so many times in our marriage that when my father offered an easy explanation, I took it. That is not an excuse. It's just what happened. I looked for you for almost a year, and then I just gave up. I have thought about that moment every single day since then." He paused. "I didn't know about the contract or your father. There are no words for how truly sorry I am." Wren looked right at him. "I know you didn't know," she said. "I've known for 2 weeks." His expression changed. "But that doesn't change the cost," she said. "My father's name. 3 years of my life. Theo growing up without." She stopped herself. "It doesn't change the cost." "No," he agreed. "It doesn't." The negotiation took 4 hours. Thorn Meridian would pay the full royalty, compounded over 8 years, in cash. $47 million would be paid to the James A. Callaway Trust. Wren would also create a design fellowship in her father's name at the University of Pennsylvania School of Architecture, his old school. And Callaway Studio would get a formal, public acknowledgement of her father's design work on the flagship building. That also included a permanent plaque on the building itself. Wren signed the papers at 2:15 p.m. As people filed out of the room, Beckett remained seated. Wren packed her documents, very aware that he was still there. She let the silence sit between them. "I want to meet him," Beckett said softly. "When you're ready. When it's right for him. I'm just asking for a chance to be there for him." Wren straightened her back and looked at him. He met her gaze with a new kind of honesty, completely unguarded. It was something she had not seen even when they were happy. "I will talk to my lawyer about making arrangements," she said. "Formal ones. He needs structure, not confusion, whatever you decide." She grabbed her bag and walked to the door, but then she stopped and turned around. "There's a therapist," she said. "Dr. Reed. On 68th and Lex. She's good. She helped me realize that you can't force someone else to show up. Learning to show up for yourself has to come first." She set a business card on the table and didn't look at his face. Then she walked out into the Rockefeller Center corridor, past the Christmas decorations that were already going up, weeks too early. She took the elevator down to the street, where the cold November air was waiting for her. Nova was outside, leaning on a wall, eating a granola bar. "Done?" Nova asked. "Done," Wren said. Nova passed her half a granola bar, and they walked toward the subway together. Wren didn't look back at the building, not even once. The city just buzzed around them, moving at its usual pace. And that was perfect. It was exactly what she needed. She knew Dex Harlan would come looking for what he was owed, but she never dreamed he'd show up at Nova's door instead of hers. Nova was in the kitchen of their sublet, packing the last of their things. They were moving out at the end of the week, both heading home. Wren was off to L.A., ready to expand Callaway Studio to New York. Nova was headed back to Brooklyn and whatever was next. The apartment was a mess of boxes, tape, and the quiet sadness of leaving a place that had started to feel like home. Dex knocked at 7 p.m. Nova opened the door. "She isn't here," Nova said. "I know," he answered. "I was hoping to speak with you." Nova watched him for a moment, then stepped aside. "You have 2 minutes." He walked in, his gaze sweeping over the boxes, noticing how they'd made this small apartment a home. There were stacks of books. A child's drawings were taped to the kitchen wall. A Kindle lay on the counter next to 2 coffee mugs. It was all evidence of a life being put back together in a temporary space. The IPO restructuring is moving forward Without the clause we fought over, he said. The Calloway settlement is a separate matter. My interests are safe. Great, Nova said flatly. You got what you wanted. He paused. I also brought something real to the negotiation. The funding he provided meant Wren could move as fast as she needed to. Without it, the timing could have been all wrong. She would have found a way, Nova said, her voice sharp. She always does. Dex was silent for a beat. He was looking at the kids' drawings on the wall. They were crooked crayon buildings, drawn with a lot of heart. How old is he? 3.5. Does he know what his mother did? He knows she fixed something that was broken, Nova replied. And that's enough for now. He nodded, then looked straight at Nova. Sloane and I were a couple for 2 years, about 6 years ago. And I didn't see what she was. Not really. I thought I did. I thought I understood her, but I was wrong. He paused, searching for the word. She's very good at showing people only what they want to see. Nova crossed her arms. And you're telling me this why? Because you dug into my past, and you're still looking at me like I owe you an explanation, he said. So I wanted to give you one. Nova looked him over. You are not a good man, Dex. No, you used a dead man's legal problem just to get ahead. Yes, but you did keep your promise. You stayed out of the way, and you didn't make things worse. She tilted her head slightly. That's about the best I can say for you. He almost smiled. That might be the most honest review I've ever gotten. Don't get too excited. She opened the door. Send the final bill to Jasper. We'll look it over. She paused. And for what it's worth, Sloane chose to be who she is. That's on her. You were just wrong about her. Being wrong doesn't make you responsible for her actions. He stood there in the doorway for a long second. Thank you. Don't thank me. It was not a compliment. She shut the door. She stood alone in the kitchen for a moment, then grabbed her phone and dialed Wren. Dex stopped by, she said. I know. I saw him leave the building from across the street. You were watching? I wanted to make sure he left without causing any trouble. Nova let out a short, warm laugh. He did. He's not dangerous, Wren. He's just a strategist. Most dangerous people are, Wren replied. But yeah, I know. A comfortable silence passed between them, the kind only sisters share. We're going home, Nova said softly. Yeah, Wren said. We're finally going home. Outside the kitchen window, the city did what it always does. It kept on moving, massive and uncaring. It carried everyone's troubles along with it, never once slowing down. Nova made some tea and got back to her packing. She taped up the last box, feeling that deep satisfaction you get when a job is truly finished. Wren picked Central Park for the meeting because it was neutral territory and because Theo loved it, especially the area near the conservatory garden with its fountain and wide walkway. It had more than enough open space for a 3.5-year-old to move at his favorite speed, which was always full blast. She had told Theo about it the week before, speaking carefully and simply. She had said, "There is someone who wants to meet you. His name is Beckett. He is your father." Theo had thought about this for a very long time. He had this serious way of absorbing new information. It reminded her so much of her own father, which made her throat feel tight in a way she was still getting used to. Then Theo asked, "Does he know how to build things?" "I'm not sure," Wren had answered honestly. "You can ask him." It was a Saturday in late November. The air had a chill, but the sun was out. The park was trying its best to look serene. Wren sat on a bench about 20 feet from the fountain. Theo stood at the edge of the path, watching the water. He'd insisted on wearing his red rain boots, even though there was no rain, and she hadn't bothered to argue. Beckett showed up right on time. He was dressed carefully, but not too formally. Just the way you dress when you know something matters. A dark coat, no tie. He looked at Wren first, and she gave him a very small nod. He walked over to Theo, stopping a few feet away, and crouched down so he was at eye level with the child who was already looking him over like an interesting new puzzle. "Hi," Beckett said. "Hi," Theo said back. Beckett looked over at the fountain. "That's a pretty good fountain." "It's okay," Theo said, being fair. "The one in Griffith Park is better. It has more water." I have never been to Griffith Park. Theo took in this new piece of information. It's in California, I know. I've never been. You should go, Theo told him. It's good. He looked at Beckett with a directness that Wren knew was all him. My mama said you're my dad. Yes, Beckett said, his voice completely steady. I am. Then how come I've never seen you before? A silence filled the air. On the bench, Wren didn't move a muscle. Because I did not know where to find you, Beckett said. That was something that happened because of mistakes that grown-ups made, not you. It was never your fault. Theo considered this. Oh, okay, he finally said, in a tone that tucked the information away for later. So, can you build things? Something quick and complicated flickered across Beckett's face. I am better at business, but I can learn how. Mama's good at building things, Theo said, obviously impressed. She built our whole apartment. Well, she designed it. Other people built it, but she showed them how. I know, Beckett said softly. She is very good at that. Theo reached into his coat pocket and pulled out 2 little wooden blocks. He took them everywhere, like some kids carry a toy car. He held one out to Beckett. You can have this one, he offered. We can build something. Beckett took the small block. Then he sat right down on the cold path, legs crossed, not seeming to care that he was ruining his coat. Theo sat right next to him. They started with intense focus to build a small tower with 2 blocks and a stick Theo found. From the bench, Wren watched them. The November sun was weak against the cold, and the park moved around them with its usual beautiful indifference. She thought of her father, of his hands on blueprints, of the things people build, and the things that get taken from them, and the things that, if you just refuse to let go, eventually come back to you. Not the same. They're never exactly the same, but they come back. She watched Theo hand Beckett another stick, like a head architect directing a new intern. She watched Beckett take it like it was the most important job he'd ever been given. She looked away, toward the fountain, and then up at the sky. She let herself feel it all, the sadness, the warmth, the long years, this one morning, without looking away. This was the real work. To feel everything and to stay present. The city moved on. The fountain kept running. Her son was building something out of almost nothing with his father in the cold light of a Saturday he would not remember, but she would never, ever forget. That was enough. It was actually more than enough. In fact, it was everything. 6 months later, Conrad Lorne was found guilty on 2 counts of securities fraud and 1 count of contract interference. His sentence was 3 years in a federal minimum security prison. His lawyers were already filing appeals that everyone knew would take years and lead nowhere. He showed up to the sentencing in a gray suit with his legal team around him and didn't say a word to anyone. Petra wasn't there. She was in Connecticut, finishing her 2nd round of cancer treatment. Her prognosis, Wren had heard from Jasper, had improved significantly. Sloan Mercer pleaded guilty to securities fraud and cooperated with prosecutors to get a shorter sentence. She lost all of her financial licenses for good. She moved to a smaller city and, from what anyone could tell, started living a very quiet life. Wren would think of her sometimes and realize she felt mostly nothing at all, which she understood was its own form of peace. The James A. Callaway Fellowship was announced that April at the University of Pennsylvania. It was a full scholarship for new architects from low-income families, with 3 winners chosen every year. The first class was selected in June. Wren went to Philadelphia for the awards ceremony. Her mother sat in the front row and cried, just like she had at every big event for the past 30 years. And that was one of the things Wren loved most about her. Callaway Studios found its new home in a converted Tribeca loft. The space was bright, with an open floor plan, and by the door, a small framed blueprint hung on the wall. It was her father's original design for the Lorne Meridian flagship, just the drawing itself, his handwriting scribbled in the margins. A bronze plaque outside, required by the settlement, read, "Original design, James A. Callaway, architect." The morning it was installed, she stood before it, placing a hand on the cool metal. She didn't say a word, but her silence spoke volumes. Meanwhile, Theo was now spending every other weekend with Beckett in Manhattan. Lawyers had hammered out a new, fair arrangement for them, a system that took a ton of work from everyone. Beckett found a child therapist to help Theo with all the changes. And Wren realized he'd also found Dr. Reed for himself. 6 weeks after she left that card on the table, a short text came from a new number. I called her. She simply wrote back, "Thank you," then replied with just a thumbs up and saved his number as B. It was a Saturday in May. Wren was in her Tribeca office, looking over blueprints for a home in the West Village. Late afternoon sun streamed through the huge windows, casting long, forgiving shadows. A cold Starbucks sat on her desk while she was on a client call, taking notes. She heard the knock on the door before she saw him. Beckett stood in the doorway. He'd come right in the main entrance, which she always left unlocked on Saturdays. He held 2 cups of coffee, way better than her cold Starbucks. "I was in the neighborhood," he said simply. "You live on the Upper East Side," she shot back. "I walked." She put her pen down and really looked at him. The man she had loved, then lost, then fought. The man she had survived. She'd come through, it all changed, stronger, and somehow still here. He placed one of the coffees on her desk. "I wanted to ask you something," he began. She waited. And then he said, "But not today. I'm not asking you today. I just wanted you to know that I am going to ask one day. When the time is right, and when I feel like I've earned it." He paused, taking a breath. "I'm not the man I was. I know that does fix anything. I am just showing you the direction I am going." Wren looked from the coffee on her desk to his face. "I know," she said softly. He simply nodded, not pushing for more. He turned to leave. "Beckett." He stopped. "Theo told me," she said, "that you're relearning to build things." A genuine, quiet change crossed his face. "I'm not very good at it yet. He says you're getting better." He met her eyes for just a moment more. And just like that, he was gone. She heard his footsteps, the elevator ding, and then the sounds of the city rushed in. She picked up the coffee he'd left for her. It was still warm. She took a sip and turned back to her work. In the office she built, in the city her father helped build. Her name was on the door. Her son's art was on the wall, lit by a golden light that seemed to last as long as she needed it. The building stood. The fellowship grew. Theo built things. Wren worked. The city moved on. And every morning the man who once had it all was slowly learning something true. The only things worth having are the things you can buy. He was learning. She was watching. Neither one of them was in a hurry. That was their ending, and for now it was enough. And that, my friends, is where our story ends today. If you've stuck with me this far, I know this story struck a chord with you. Maybe it was Wren's quiet strength as her whole world collapsed. Or maybe it was her refusal to give up, even with the odds stacked against her. Or maybe you saw a piece of your own journey in her story. Because that's the real lesson here, the one I want you to carry with you. The philosopher Marcus Aurelius once said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength. Wren didn't win because life suddenly got fair. She won because she refused to let injustice write the last chapter. She rebuilt her world quietly, patiently, and with incredible power. She didn't do it out of revenge, she did it out of love. Love for her father's name, for her son's future, and for the woman she was growing into. The real lesson is this: healing is some big loud show. It hardly ever makes an announcement. It looks like opening your laptop at midnight, exhausted and scared, and choosing to take just one more step forward. So, wherever you are, if life has dealt you an unfair hand, something painful that feels impossible to overcome, think of Wren. And remember this: a woman with nothing left to lose is the most powerful force in the world. If this story connected with you, please take a second to click the like button. It really helps our channel get these stories out to more people who might need them. And for more videos like this one every week, go ahead and subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss an update. Please consider sharing this with someone who could use this message today. Because sometimes the right story shows up at just the right time. Thank you so much for watching, and we will see you in the next video. This story is a work of original fiction, made for your entertainment. All characters, including Ren Calloway, Rebecca Lorne, Nova Calloway, Conrad Lorne, Petra Lorne, Sloane Mercer, Dex Harlan, and Jasper Whitfield, are entirely fictional. They do not represent any real people, living or dead. Any resemblance to actual people, events, groups, or locations is purely coincidental. The situations you saw in this story, like legal or business issues, were made up for the sake of drama. This content should not be seen as actual legal advice, financial advice, or factual reporting. Any names of places, brands, or companies were used only to help set the scene for the story. This does not mean we have any partnership with them or that they endorse us. This video is for mature audiences who enjoy emotional, character-driven dramas. Our goal is to share meaningful stories that inspire thought, empathy, and hope, not to pretend this is reality. Thank you for watching Responsibly.Model.